2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and we are finishing up Strange May as we had to jump one of these discussions forward to today, and it is one of my choices. So my mom used to throw on whatever she could to keep us from being bored and record it. And then we would have recorded movies on VHS. And this was one of those endeavors that she tried to endear to my sister and myself. And it kind of somewhat stuck with me because of, at the time, it was a copy that wasn't as fuzzy as the one that's on YouTube right now, but I've yet to pick up a physical copy for myself yet. I know it is a rare DVD to find out in the wild, but it is a 1954 electric stop-motion animation film from 1954, which is directed by Joe Paul. It is called Hansel and Gretel originally, but once it went to DVD, they added the An Opera Fantasy, and rightly so, because, well, I'll tell you in a minute, because IMDb kind of tells us. An electric puppet version of the Humperdinck opera, adapted for children and using spoken dialogue as well as Humperdinck's music. Doesn't really tell you what the whole thing is about, but you know, IMDb is often vague. But let us go into, well,
I would wager that most people have heard of Hansel and Gretel and at least know the broad strokes.
No one would hope. But I guess it was directed by John Paul. It was written by Adelheid Waits, Pedrick Cullum, and Willem Grin. Oh, so one of the Grimm brothers was involved in the writing of this. But it stars Anna Russell, Mildred Donut, and Frank Roger, among a few others. Cast of 7. So, first impressions going around the room. Let's start with you, Jake. What was your first impression of this film? I assume that you have not seen this before.
You assume correctly. I have not seen this film before. Perhaps I would get more out of it if I ever get the opportunity to watch a cleaner copy. Because, yes, the YouTube copy was less than clean. It was fuzzy. The sound was pretty rough. I don't know how much of that we can hold against the film and how much is just the presentation. But as far as the film overall, I'm not even sure I was aware that this copy existed. According to IMDb, it's the first feature-length stop-motion American film, so I guess it's very notable in that regard.
Yep. So be called a grandfather of some of the lengthy history of stop-motion animation with puppets.
Right. And as I noted before, everyone knows the basic story of Hansel and Gretel. It's been around for many, many years. It's I want to say this one's associated with Hans Christian Andersen. Is that correct, or am I just making that up?
I think you're just making that up because Wilhelm Grimm was involved in the writing.
So it was one of the Brothers Grimm stories. Okay. I get those two confused sometimes. I'm a bad English major in that I've not read very much by either. Although I do know a lot of the stories that they did. Of course, I also remember Hansel and Gretel as a brief, disturbing one-off note in Okami-san and her seven companions, but it was.
Hans Christian Andersen had been involved in doing a retelling of.
Okay, there you go. They definitely hit the same well a handful, at least a couple of times, I'm sure. But regardless, this is one of those old tales that's been told many a time, and this version does have a couple of differences from what I'm used to. I'm used to the version with the breadcrumbs, and I don't think that factored into this.
Nope.
Other than that, I thought it was interesting. There were some interesting visuals. I put an image up of the Sandman, who I also don't remember from the tale, but that was a very, let's just say he looked creepier than the witch. It was interesting. And it does give me a feeling that this is I would see this if Criterion could get their heads out of their asses about animation. I would see this being potentially, if it was the first American stop motion film, I could see them wanting to do this as a release. And certainly if Criterion or a similar entity were to clean it up and give us a nice, crisp edition, it might be a pretty interesting watch. But my first impression, what's that?
We're speaking to you, Vinegar Syndrome, because they have a sister company that's been putting out a lot of interesting.
Vinegar Syndrome would be an interesting one as well.
They have a lot of partner companies that put out a little bit of things. Like one that I had that was a versus that contenders, like Everything We Can Do to Entertain You, for instance, good example.
Yeah.
I mean, a 60-minute documentary about a video store in New York that had survived through all things eventually to be killed off in 2015, but you know, that's not Blockbuster. So, you know, I mean, yeah, this would be one of those things I could see, though Arrow might also be an interesting one for an animation collection where you could get some of these like puppet animations that you throw them all together.
Honestly, though, of all the boutique firms out there, the one I would be most non-surprised, like each one of those, I'd be modestly surprised. I would see this being one that Kino Lorber would put out. And Kino does a decent job cleaning things up too, although not quite as good as Criterion or whatever. But the point being, if we get a nice, crisp, clean edition, I would probably give it another go. I'd probably want to have it in the collection, and I'd probably get more out of it. But on my first viewing, my first impression, honestly, it really had trouble holding my focus. I'm probably not going to have a heck of a lot to say about particulars because I probably don't remember a lot of the particulars. But overall, it was an interesting watch. And, you know, like I said, I'll be happy to give it a go again one day, but not the YouTube edition.
Okay. Heading over to you, Brandon. Was this a first time watch for you?
Maybe. Because I've seen a lot of these things as a child, and I swear I remember the dancing bear and goose. So it's very possible. And I saw a lot of these creepy puppet things as a child. So it's very possible, because a lot of them ran together like anything in my childhood. Of course, this weekend, you know, I mean, celebrating my birthday, and I'm like, okay, I need to fit this in. So when I was on my own on Saturday at a Pakistani pizza place, which is very interesting. Interesting story how I ended up there, but I'm not going to digress at all. I said, you know what, I'm going to sit down and watch this while I'm eating my lunch. It's all right. I mean, I think I probably would have been creeped out more about it as a kid, more because of the visuals. It's actually a very safe version of Hansel and Gretel, considering the nastiness of it, of the original story. But then again, when you're talking about the Brothers Grimm, that's not saying much. So, you know, as far as Hansel and Gretel goes, it was an okay version. I think, you know, to show little kids, I think it would go well. As far as an adult seeing it for the first time, not necessarily recommended. I was looking for the kids to get eaten by the end, so I was disappointed.
Okay. Well, as I said before, my mom threw this on one of our overly taped VHS at one point in time. For some reason, it was spun over and over for my benefit, and it kind of stuck with me as an animation. And the copy that I remember seeing was a hell of a lot more clearer than the YouTube copy that you guys saw. And because I remember much of it clearer as I was watching it from the YouTube copy, I actually personally think that this is one of the more detailed puppet movies I've seen in my entire lifetime. And I would almost put it up in league with the Dark Crystal type per se, just because there was so much detail to this one. The eyes moved, the eyebrows moved. I mean, yeah, you could almost not tell whether they were talking as much, but I didn't remember it being as slow. It is definitely a sleeper as an adult, but I liked the different songs that the children sung. I liked the creepy song the father sung about the brooms. And as an adult looking backwards, I've seen a lot of people review this particular animation, and they remember it being a hell of a lot more creepier than I remembered it being. So I guess it's a fun one for people to go on about and reminisce about and whatnot. If I could find a copy that was at least okay, I'd be cool with that. But I would love it if one of these companies took it up and decided to give it to a broader audience, like one of Vinegar Syndrome's sister companies. Dustin, was this a first time watch for you?
Well, in doing a little bit of research about this, it sounds like this was a major childhood thing for quite a lot of people for quite a lot of years. And I have literally never, ever heard of this or seen any kind of poster or screenshot or nothing whatsoever for this. Like, the only evidence I had that it exists was the copy we watched on YouTube that you guys sent me.
Yep.
So,
And it does have a DVD out there. It's just very rare.
yeah, I did see that when I was looking up info on it, that there is a DVD out there. It just seems kind of like the sort of thing like maybe Mill Creek or something would release. Something with kind of like a niche market, but not necessarily expensive. But, well, anyway, so this was a really strange one. So the copy on YouTube, I don't know if there is a better copy you could see online, like paid or otherwise. It was pretty shoddy. It was very difficult to tell what was happening. I mean, the stuff you could make out, though, like, it was really visually impressive. After a little bit of digging, I guess this was one of the earliest non-animated animated films made in America, and I was surprised to see this was made in America because it looks very European in kind of how it's made.
It does. It does.
Like I made the joke with if anybody's seen enough episodes of The Simpsons, I don't remember where Homer is, but he's at some like weird car dealership, and it's like the letters on like the drive shift are like Cyrillic. Like instead of like a Mustang or whatever, like hood ornament, the car has like a fly. And Homer's like, "What country was this car made in?" And the salesman is like, "You know, it'll go 300 hectares on a single liter of kerosene. You know, the country no longer exists." And that was the feeling I got when I was like, "Where is this from?" But American, well, surprise. I mean, I completely agree with the slow pacing. It really knocked me out for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely got a slow sleeper like pace, and I'm not sure about you guys as far as opera goes. Certain opera I can stand, and some opera I cannot.
This was very warbly.
It was very warbly, and what is it? Engelbert Humperdinck. I remember seeing loads and loads of vinyl records back in the day of Engelbert Humperdinck's music or opera or whatever, and he was quite a. I guess if you wanted the artsy fartsy of the operas, he was like before Hans Zimmer and Mannheim Steamroller and all that jazz.
Well, I mean, a lot of it also comes with the very bad sound quality, which I think would help a bit if we get better sound quality. I think if this was cleaned up quite a bit, you get somebody that works on it, like one of these boutique labels, that would help a lot. That would go a long ways. And I think having supplements with it would help for most adults who watch it. I think for kids, little kids, like single-digit kids, this would still be entertaining enough.
Oh yeah, especially for first time. Kids would probably remember it the first time they saw it, just like I did. I mean, I'm 40 years old and I still remember it from the 90s. So,
I mean, I remember from our episodes that we did back in with Dane talking about nostalgia, and I think that I still say that I disagree with some of his points from those episodes, but I do agree with one thing in that nostalgia is one hell of a drug. and it does help us a lot more with some of this. I mean, Jake and I have been going through every Walt Disney Company film release in my collection as sort of like a farewell to the Disney Movie Club. And there is definitely some nostalgia tinting from some of these.
No doubt.
So it's kind of a, we were talking about Swiss Family Robinson, good example of that. I'm not sure how I'm going to react when I finally see it for the first time. But I know Jake I'm sure Jake will have at least a small part of his mind that goes, you know what? I enjoyed this as a kid.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it as a kid. And I think even though we kind of joked about how one could have a negative read on it nowadays, it is one that I would probably still feel comfortable watching every once in a while. And just, if I had the time, it's a good lazy afternoon, maybe.
So,
and to that point on nostalgia, like I think that's a very valid point too. Like that seems to happen a lot with horror movies that people have a connection to. Because I kind of get in internet fights a lot about the Halloween movies. And I've noticed over the course of this that a lot of people saying, H2O is a great Halloween movie. They often have a story about, oh, yeah, I saw it when I was in 4th grade. And, they can describe their whole day. And it's like, I see. But if you're, like, objective, it's probably the worst Halloween movie, which is saying something.
Every movie has its audience. Every movie.
Yes, but I think
one only needs to go to the first Sallow episode that's on this channel to know that every film has its audience and people who look at it as a film that they love. I mean, I remember Feel Good movie was used to describe Sallow multiple times during that episode. And,
Who said that?
I believe it was Katie.
Katie, no, that was in fact Shauna.
Because I know Katie was saying it was one of her favorites. And then there was... there were a couple others. It was one that most of the people on there were like, this is a great film. We love it. I'm like, that film can burn in a fire.
Well,
nostalgia aside, and I think that that's why I put this one forward for Strange May, and it is strange, but
it is very eerie looking. Like I will give it that. Like visually, it is so odd. Like it's not necessarily like always creepy, but it does have kind of a creepy like feel to it pretty much all throughout. Okay. And like there's some random thing with like angels and stuff. Like what even was that? Like they died? Like I thought they had died for like a good 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay.
It could have been a dream. Like fever dream as they're all dying.
But anyways, so let's get into some of the plot. So everyone knows the story of Hansel and Gretel. Oftentimes it's two children who get lost in a pair of woods. Sometimes their parents are involved, sometimes they're not, and they end up coming upon this gingerbread house, and are set upon by a witch, which they realize that she's a witch, and then, of course, one of them has the idea to push her into the oven and save themselves from disaster. But that being said, there's a little bit more detail involved in the backstory of Hansel and Gretel. They are the daughter and son of a broom maker, and they have been told to do some chores and tie some brooms together by their mother, and they decide instead to play around and dream. When their mother comes back, she's immediately berating them, so much so that she goes after them and breaks the only cream that would have been their dinner, so to speak. So she tasks them with going out and going and grabbing some strawberries from the woods, which the mother seems to not think that there's any immediate danger or whatnot. Honestly, I feel like the mother berates them a little bit too harshly. And maybe that might just be the dialogue and how the audio is not really in sync or whatnot. But what do y'all think about the children? Because they sing a couple of songs here before their mother sets upon them. And what do you think about the mother?
It's kind of nuts.
I think it's a mother that's under a lot of pressure. I mean, now I compare it to the Grimm Tales one, which is basically the parents wish that they had exercised birth control, and they decided that losing kids in the forest would be the best way of exercising it after the fact. But
they just throw them away, don't they? I forgot about that.
But as far as this one, it just comes across that mother's stressed because they don't have a lot of resources. These kids are kind of like not taking things as seriously as they should, playing around. They basically knocked over the jar, which was their only food, which was cream.
Well, it's the mother who does that.
Yeah, but this is while the kids are playing around and shirking their chores. And it leads that to happen.
Well, I mean, she flips out on them with like a broom, and she's just like hitting random shit, and like she breaks it.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can necessarily blame the kids per se for that, unless you're a big believer in the "you made me do this" mentality.
Yeah,
again, I'm looking more on the lines of this is probably somebody who hasn't eaten in a few days, has been.
All the more reason to be careful around food.
Probably rationing, since they don't have a whole lot of food to begin with.
And the mother does, in this version, the mother does consider her actions as overly harsh later, especially when she comes to herself and realizes she acted in anger. But do I think that the mother is like a incomprehensible monster? No.
No, but I do think that she was a little bit more overly angry than she probably should have been.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, it is as it is.
I mean, you can't tell me that the father. You can't tell me that the father coming back. You can't tell me that the father coming back telling her about the tale of the witch in the woods isn't the first time that he's spun that tale. You know, it seems to be kind of a legend around these dar woods that this witch takes children or whatnot, which. Shortly after the kids go off in search of strawberries, that's when we get the father coming down the hill, singing some opera of his own, which he's obviously in a good mood, and he comes in, and she tells the woes of the cracked cream. And he's like, not to worry, I've got more than enough right here. And he starts to pull out a few things, and she's like, what, you've got eggs, cheese, milk, bread? how did you come across this? And then he tells her that he took his batch of brooms that were made, and he sold every single one. And no matter what price he gave to his the customers, they paid them because they were a good product, and he was probably a good seller for that type of thing, What did y'all think about the father?
Maybe the most normal person in this movie.
Probably.
Yeah, more or less.
I feel like he came across as a bit too carefree at first, and it gave me that impression that she's kind of like been fed up with also him not delivering on the workload. I almost thought that he was just some like vagabond that was coming by when he first started coming, because he was just all singing and all that stuff. But then he finally was able to do something and bring in for something like that. But again, I'm just looking at it from like the perspective of how he was received when he first came in and all that stuff. Was sort of that suspicion almost that the mother treated him like. It's very possible. And again, maybe it's because I'm reading too much into the original material, and father is like being the carefree guy, and he had left for however long trying to do these sales, leaving her and the kids on their own.
See, I don't remember in the original tale there being parents involved at all. I just thought that these were two kids that were on their own originally.
In the original tale, basically the parents are they're having hard luck on life, and they're realizing that the kids are a drain on their resources, so they take them out in the forest basically to get them. Basically, take them out to the forest to dump them to die, essentially. And they go home, and the kids talk about using these breadcrumbs, which are then, swept out. And then, of course, they come into the witch, and the witch, the whole thing from there. How it happens at the end, it varies, but at that point, the parents were definitely at the end of their luck, and they're just looking to get rid of these kids.
Yep. So
and these kids act pretty damn irresponsibly too.
They do.
For kids that have actually not eaten every day and know how tough the life is on them. I mean, shoot, they go out to pick these berries, and then they eat them
right around.
Yeah. It's like, darn.
Meanwhile, while they are doing that, the father is laying into the mother about why did you let them go in the woods? Don't you remember the story about the witch? By the time we see them again, the witch will get them, and he sings about the broom and the broomstick that he had left ended up flying straight to the witch. And we actually see bits and pieces of the witch up until this point too, because she's like playing peekaboo and obviously like keeping an eye on what's happening with this family, because she's evidently on the prowl. So well, the kids, after eating all the food that they had went there to go gather, I think they got lost, and they ran into and for all intents and purposes used the Sandman, which is a totally different fairy tale to put in with this thing.
Yeah.
And he puts them to sleep, and then you see a whole heavenly host of guardian angels.
Which I gotta say, that whole sequence almost makes it look like he's offering them up for the slaughter.
He may be.
It almost looks like the angels are there to take them away to heaven or somewhere else. And it's like, it was a weird sequence.
Angel's like, y'all screwed up for the last time. We're feeding y'all to the witch.
And I was just almost like calling the Sandman like Clarence, because he was in like the type of white pajamas that Clarence from It's a Wonderful Life was in. So
there was one of these. Maybe it was a Shrek movie. I don't think it was. But it was a fairy tale based film where the main characters were trying to get a hold of a wishing star. And they were all fighting each other, and Hansel and Gretel were the like bad guys in it. And I'm trying to remember what that movie was. It was an animated film.
I think you may.
It's the Puss in Boots movie. That's the one.
What's up? What's up?
It was the Puss in Boots movie.
That wasn't Hansel and Gretel, though. That was Goldilocks and the Three Bears.
That was the second Puss in Boots movie.
Yeah.
Where
No.
Hansel.
Yeah.
Goldilocks was Goldilocks and the Three Bears, one of the antagonists, but the main antagonist.
That was Jack. What's his face?
No, oh yeah, Little Jack Horner.
Little Jack Horner. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I was thinking Hansel and Gretel because Shrek made them these like really overweight twins running around.
Yeah.
But we have the angels guarding our children here, and the parents have actually gone off and searched. They get lost, but also the witch has disguised her voice as Hansel and Gretel to guide them away from Hansel and Gretel. And it's shortly after their dream of the angels is when they find this house made of gingerbread and candies and all that jazz. And they begin to eat the house. I believe it was more Hansel that was eating the house, and she was eating a little bit, but they were kind of playing around with singing to the witch inside, although they didn't know she was the witch right then and there. What did you think about that moment that they kind of like met the witch and all that jazz?
I may have been under for that. It seemed to happen really suddenly.
Okay, because she was singing about who was eating off her house, and they were like singing like they were saying, "Ha ha, we're eating your house," type of thing. And once the witch appeared, I believe she tied Hansel up, and he kept calling her names, and she kept trying to feed him food, and she then the two actually tried to escape, but then she did some creepy stealth that made them turn around and come back, and she was ultimately able to put Hansel into a cage and tie the cage up, and then she put Gretel inside the house, told her to prepare dinner or something like that, and she went off on a broom flying spree. What did y'all think about all of that at any given point in time? What about you, Jake? What did you think about that part of the film?
I mean, I think at this point I was sitting there going, she did such a shitty job of tying him up, and she's just letting Gretel run around free.
Gotta have her serve him.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It was weird. I was just waiting for them to go ahead and throw her in the oven,
And I kept on thinking that at least the cat that the witch had, at least it had a tail that had a mind of its own. Because I noticed that the tail seemed to be wagging quite a bit when it came along.
Touch. I remember that from from earlier in the movie when they introduced the witch. It was kind of, because it was so poor picture quality, it was kind of hard to figure out what that was for a little bit. But that was an interesting, like, little just kind of flourish that they put on.
But she has this plan, this witch, to take and cook Gretel first, and then prepare the boy to fatten him up and cook him too. And there are also other gingerbread children on the property that you don't know will eventually come alive eventually. But the story goes where, Hansel and Gretel somehow end up tricking the witch into telling them how to, how to prepare the oven. And I like that Hansel basically whispers to Gretel, "Hey, get her to tell you again, and make her show you, And so she does. That's when he comes out the cage, pushes her in, and the entire gingerbread house, the oven, all of that just disappears like immediately. But I did want to mention something earlier. When they were going through the woods, I did like that segue where Gretel and Hansel kept seeing things in the woods, and they were wondering what they were, because they were shadows in the woods, and some of them appeared to be monsters to them as kids, but it was Hansel, the voice of reason, that basically was trying to tell her, no, that's just a stump. No, that's just this. No, that's just that. But even so, her imagination kept running away with her. What did y'all think about that? Brandon?
I got no thoughts on that.
Okay.
I mean, it was kind of it gave them a little bit more, like, something to do on the, like, trek through the woods before bizarre angel thing.
Yeah.
Or possibly after. Like, that was so trippy. It was really disorienting. I was like, what the fuck? The whole time.
Well, and the thing is, I think they were trying to make opera more of a thing, at this point in time. I mean, who wants to listen to a whole bunch of boring opera in a children's fairy tale?
To me, it barely sounded like opera, to tell you the truth. I mean, it just sounded like a standard stale musical.
I mean, there was an opera episode of Hey Arnold that was really good. I mean, opera isn't inherently boring to kids.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching a rendition of, gosh, I'm trying to remember what the name of the opera was. I actually I've done two. I've seen two operas that I really liked. There was one I watched at the New York Metropolitan Opera, which was really good. I mean, they did a great job. The music was intensive, and the way that they had the scenes together, it was right there. And then I want to say it was Faust, maybe. And then the other one is Don Giovanni. I remember watching it in one of the oldest opera houses in Vienna. And despite the fact that it was summertime and they don't have AC and they required you to dress up in a tux, which not comfortable. The opera was still very intriguing. Now, towards the end of it, I couldn't concentrate because I was dying of heat stroke. But the opera itself was very there. And then I saw another opera a while back. I want to say also in New York, and I was asleep by the second measure of it. So, it really does depend.
I guess it depends on what puts you to sleep and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Not like I can listen to Verdi's Aida, and it is astounding. Or like that duet that you have Andy Dupree playing through in Shawshank Redemption, The Marriage of Figaro. That is so beautiful, but depends on who's singing and how intense it is to you. So, but that being said, going back towards the end of this animation, everything appears, and then of course you see that the children who were gingerbread are now somewhat alive, but they can't really move. So they're singing to the children, "Come and touch us, and we'll be free." That type of thing. And so they go and touch each one, and they're singing of their freedom. And then, of course, that's when the parents come in, say that they found them, and the kids run down, "Mama, Daddy," and it's pretty much the end of the film. I mean, some of these stop motion animations, sometimes they're 45 minutes. This one was just a little bit over an hour. What did y'all think about the production at the end of the day? I know it was a blurry.
Well, what I could make out was really quite impressive. Like it was very unique, and it was very well made. Like it's hard to describe because I've seen something kind of like it before, but I don't know how to really explain it without like a long backstory kind of thing. Like you can tell it's stop motion. Well, I guess that's kind of a stupid thing to say, but it's the kind of stop motion that's like really obvious. Like I thought this might have been some sort of early like Rankin Bass kind of feature at first, and I would like to know if anybody knows if there's any kind of connection between this and
this was relatively about 30 years before the first Rankin Bass short existed, I believe. Maybe
Are you sure? Wasn't Rankin Bass in the 60s and this was the 50s?
I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure.
No, I'm
Because
I'm saying I'm pretty sure on Dustin's point. Let me see here.
Yeah, because isn't like the Frosty stuff from like 1969 or something?
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was 64, so that was 10 years after this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like 30
So
years would put
wasn't-
it in the 80s, and this was ooh.
Originally, I thought 80s, but I had never done any research into this until like before we came on this. So,
Oh, yeah.
1954. That's pretty freaking early. So, what about you, Jake? What did you think about the production of this? Even though I know it was
I mean, kind of like what we said before, like if I have tremendous respect for stop motion as an art form, and I think the visual designs here are quite interesting. Unfortunately the copy we saw did not allow for a fully accurate assessment of the production, but I would say it looks like it was probably pretty solid.
okay. And what about you, Brandon? What did you think about the production overall?
I mean, I think this is actually a pretty cool thing as one of the early American stop motion like doll films, and I mean it's definitely an institution for that, and I think that it did a great job for the time. I mean, we're talking, what was it? You're 54. So there have been stop motion feature. I mean, I don't know what featured, but like definitely stop motion animations prior to that, but still did a great job with that. And again, I'm sure that seeing a clearer copy later would highlight that even more. But still very good. I'm impressed by that. Visually, it's very nice.
Okay. And what did y'all think about the music? A lot of it was from Humperdinck's opera. Being related to children through the eyes of children and some adults. What did y'all think about the opera aspect of the film?
I think
I like the broom song. I don't know about you guys.
I think it needs to be cleaned up. But that's, again, it's just sound quality is a big thing. And I think maybe if I had seen this at its best, I might have liked it more. But it just kind of flew to the background for me for the most part.
Now, looking at the credits, it seems like some of the songs were done by like children's choirs and stuff. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why some of the songs weren't like perfect performed. I
don't know. I've seen some children's choirs that are.
Well, that's not to knock like children's choirs. It's
well, the angels,
still,
and the children at the end were the one and the same. But yeah, they were a children's choir.
Actually, Vienna Boys Choir, good example of one. I've seen them perform twice, and oh my God, they are. It kind of makes me fear what they did to prepare them, but still, they are amazing.
I think that was the name of the choir in the credits, right?
Yeah. So again, it's probably more due to the crappy sound
Boys
on YouTube through. Because all this has probably been put through recording, put through that. I'm sure that the original product was probably much clearer, much better.
So the name of the witch was Rosina Rubylips, and she was voiced by Anna Russell. The mother was voiced by Mildred Dunnock. Father was voiced by Frank Rogier. Sandman's voice was Delbert Anderson. The Dew Fairy, I don't know where that was, but the voice was Helen Boatwright. And then Constance Brigham did the voice for both Hansel and Gretel. But let's go into favorite scenes and our favorite characters. Let's start with you, Dustin. Did you have any favorite scenes and or favorite characters?
Well, the father, like the broom maker, I thought he was kind of a fun. I thought he was a fun character because he was the only one who was kind of normal. Like everybody else is really exaggerated, and he's just like, "Yeah, I sold all my brooms. We're doing great." And it's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of relatable." And as soon as the member's like, "Oh yeah, I threw them out," he's like, "You did what? What's wrong with you?" So I like his character. Normally I like the villains in these, but you know we get kind of a few scenes of the witch just sort of hanging out, and I don't know, that didn't really work so hot for me because it's kind of like, what are we doing here? And I think my favorite scene might have been like the end where everything is like weirdly resolved in like baffling ways. So she wants to eat the children by turning them into gingerbread, but the children are just okay. Like when you kill the witch, like she didn't eat them. She just kind of kept them like as decor.
I thought they were sort of like spirits or something, but I guess they weren't. They were like the real kids. And it was like, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I didn't understand that.
Very odd. And then at the very end, like the witch is made of gingerbread now, and they're just like, you know, dancing around. And I was like, oh, are they gonna eat her? And I thought I saw somebody take a bite out of her, but it was just kind of like, well,
for some
whatever.
reason, I seem to remember them actually eating the witch at the end of everything. But that could have just been my imagination.
Honestly, like they were climbing all over her, and it was genuinely difficult to tell what they were doing. Like if they were like nibbling on her or whatever.
So be it. When in Rome. What about you, Brandon? Favorite characters and our favorite scene, and maybe if anyone wants to put out their favorite fairy tale.
Huh? Well, the goose and the bear are my favorite characters. It's the only one I can. The only reason why I remember that I've seen this anytime before before this time was those. And they stuck with me, and I think that's probably going to be what will stick with me for this from here on. As far as favorite scene, I kind of liked the scene where they're sitting there plotting, and she's kind of doing the work, and she's plotting to do Gretel, but Hansel's plotting with Gretel to do that. I think that was kind of a nice little backstabby moment, which was kind of fun. Favorite fairy tale. There's a lot of interesting ones there. Maybe Little Red Riding Hood. I like that one.
Okay. How about Dustin? If you could pick a favorite fairy tale, what would it be?
We saw Three-Way. That was Little Red Riding Hood, basically, right?
Which one?
Freeway?
I think so.
So, because I'd maybe go with like Little Red Riding Hood, because like seeing that kind of showed me that you can take like the very basic idea of a fairy tale and do something like really different with it, and whatever like lesson the fairy tale had to impart is still valid, which is kind of how do I put this? Like proves its value as like a folktale, like parable kind of thing. So I think I'd go with that one because I liked that one.
Okay.
I think Brotherhood of Wolves, or
Brotherhood of the Wolf was cool, except for the end. But the rest,
it wasn't Brotherhood of Wolves. It was Oh, what was it? There was another one.
Company of Wolves.
The Company of Wolves. Okay, I was close. That was another one that had some really cool things to say with like the Little Red Riding Hood story. So I think I'll pick that as my favorite fairy tale because of like what of all the other stuff you can do with it. How it doesn't have to always be, like this traditional setup for it to still like have impact or be like an interesting story.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. Favorite character, favorite scene or scenes, favorite fairy tale.
That's tricky on a couple of occasions. I'm inclined to agree with Dustin that the father might be one of the better characters in here. Most of them were so thin, like there was so little characterization to most of them. Hansel and Gretel themselves are not bad. I think they, were given a little bit of depth. The Sandman wasn't given much characterization, but that's definitely the one I'm going to remember the best. Arguably, the scene where he's introduced might be one of the more memorable. I'm really not sure what I would pick for a favorite scene for this one. I'm really not sure. Maybe the part where the father comes home singing so cheerfully that it's almost creepy. I thought that was kind of fun.
There's a little bit of a "who the hell is this guy" kind of
exactly
feel to that, isn't there?
And I swore I heard him singing about children crying. Maybe I misheard that. But I swore I heard him singing about children crying, but he was so upbeat and cheerful that I'm like, holy shit, that's disturbing. I love it. Maybe I misheard it, but that was my initial impression. But as far as fairy tales, if we're talking like an old, like, I guess you got to figure out, like, are we talking the overall story as it exists throughout pop culture, or are we talking like we've actually read one of the old fairy tales or a movie that could be
your favorite fairy tale? Doesn't mean it has to be modern or
right. Because if we're looking at things of any age that could be considered fairy tales, I would probably have to say that The Princess Bride would be my favorite one. Also with Pan's Labyrinth, a close second. But if we're talking about the archetypal fairy tales, I'm going to have to agree that Red Riding Hood might be one of the classic archetypal tales. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
If we're talking, I'll start with my favorite character. I would have to say is the father, especially when he's explaining to the mother the legend of the witch, and she's just getting more frightened as he keeps telling her, and making her feel like this small for sending the kids out or whatnot. And the broom song.
She should have known about the witch. Like, honestly, I mean, I don't know why we keep trying to give the mother like a totally free pass on everything.
Well, not a free pass, but do I think that she's 100% a monster? No.
I don't think she's 100%.
No, not at all. She was just a little harsh.
I mean, she was a little harsh. She was human. To say that, like, well, take somebody, you don't eat for 2 to 3 days, working constantly, then you have kids just shirking the chores and all of that. not taking things seriously. If you say, well, 99.9% of the people wouldn't break under that stress at all. I'm just saying that's the thing, is that, people break under stress. Maybe it's because I work with lots of parents that I give more slack to this, where I see parents that have been under stress like that, and they have like one or two breaks with it, where they'll say something, they'll feel bad about it afterwards. But that's the thing. That's what people are. I think sometimes we hold people up to a perfection. Like, well, she should have just been happy about it, been gentle about it, and said, you shouldn't have done that, but that's okay. I'll do it all, and laugh about it.
No.
But now this was more of an extreme reaction, yes, but I think that there's a difference between saying that she's like this kind of evil witch of a mother, or that she's sort of like a.
I wouldn't say that.
I'm not sure anyone said that.
She wasn't like the mother.
I don't give her an entire path.
From a child called It, where she burned their hands on a stove.
Yeah.
For no
Like I
reason.
don't even consider her as harsh as the ones in the fairy tale. We're looking to just get rid of the kids.
But yeah, no, nowhere near that bad.
So she's, to me, she was sending them off to pick strawberries. And yeah, the area of the woods where the strawberries were was supposedly somewhat safe, but the kids themselves go off path. But she should have warned them about the witch when she did.
Right.
That's the biggest issue.
Well,
I was picking before.
I will say one thing too. Like, it almost sounds like we may be a little harsh on her, but it almost sounds like you were fully taking her side with the kids. I will say Hansel was slack, but Gretel was hard at work until he got her to join him for,
Well, yeah, he was the enabler.
Yeah. But she came in and basically acted like they hadn't done shit. And I'm like, give credit where it's due, I know you're upset, but there was work done.
Right? Like, goddamn.
So, I say,
next you're going to apologizing for the witch.
Yeah, I think it's more along the lines of, I didn't want it to look like she's just a total bad guy as y'all were starting on it. So I was saying, give her a little bit of slack.
No.
But, so that's the thing. I don't consider her evil as a parent. I don't consider what she did to be necessarily right, but I don't consider it 100% wrong either.
It is better than abandoning your kids in the woods. I will say that.
That is true.
Okay. But that broom song that the father was singing to Wifey Pooh is my favorite scene. Just for some reason, it was a little. If I were to say anything creepy, that part was creepy to me as a kid and as an adult. But that being said, if I had to say anything about a classic fairy tale, The Tortoise and the Hare would be one of mine.
Disney did a good rendition of that one.
Fables. But if I was talking modern day, the true story of the Big Bad Wolf is my second favorite, where the wolf tells the story of the three little pigs.
Well, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, like an archetypal tale. Like, you're technically still doing Red Riding Hood there, but Big Bad Wolf. Sorry, the Three Little Pigs. You're still doing, but that's the thing. Those archetypal tales get told and retold in many different forms.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get some really weird shit that comes from the same basic source.
I remember Hoodwinked. That was an interesting one.
Oh, yeah. That was an interesting take from Red Riding Hood. You got the, again, I keep mentioning Okami-san and her 7 companions, which rolled together Red Riding Hood, the Ant and the Grasshopper, the Tale of Taro and Ryogu, all kinds of stuff with, like I said, one-off jokes. It's Snow White, and Shrek did the same thing, rolled a whole bunch of stuff together. Puss in Boots would be one of those archetypal tales that became a classic in the hands of the DreamWorks people. And then of course we covered
first in canon.
And then, of course, we covered a fascinating take on The Little Mermaid on this channel.
Which Hans Christian Andersen does his own rewrite of The Little Mermaid. So,
right.
But in any case, alrighty. Well, did anyone else have anything else to add?
Yeah. Well, if anybody's listening from any of these boutique companies later on, this is an ideal one. See if you can get some of the original sources, clear up the music, clear up the visuals, and bring it there. I know it can't be done because I've seen it done. Not with this one,
Well, I would definitely love to see someone try to accomplish a very good copy of this, definitely. And then maybe if they actually do come out with a copy, we'll re-talk about it.
I mean, without this, Santa wouldn't have been able to start making out with kids on his lap. Coming to town.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we tell them a little bit about ourselves and what we do. So, Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What you do?
Well, I used to collect horror movie stuff around Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I had a YouTube channel to show off the stuff I would find. Channel's been kind of on hold because I haven't been able to collect anything really for a while, but we're trying to revive it. So that's the Crypt of Horrors. I'm gonna give that a subscription, and make me feel bad enough about not uploading anything that I upload something sooner. And I have an Instagram for the horror collection as well, the Crypt of Horrors, and I'm on Twitter pretty much every day as Dirk Cryptaxis, where you can hear my insane movie takes. So, and Cryptaxis is also my letterboxd. So if you want to check that out, that's how to find me.
Yeah. One of the only places I have actually seen anyone go into detail about horror vinyl, which is pretty cool stuff.
Horror vinyl is great. I love it so much. Very expensive hobby though. Good Lord.
Heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm Kotobukijake. I am the occasional co-host of SeptumSin versus the World. I also am basically right now trying really, really hard for our channel to get everything together for this year's Versus Awards. We have begun collecting nominations and compiling said nominations, and we'll hopefully have that list together shortly. For our big show later in the season, it was a very interesting year for movies, some pretty good ones. And meanwhile, and we have covered a handful of the contenders on this channel. So I know we did Poor Things, Totally Killer, Five Nights at Freddy's. Were there any others? But check out those discussions, definitely. And I keep pretty busy most of the time. Although, with work primarily, I did have a little stay in the hospital last week. So looking forward to not worrying about that going forward, I hope. And just basically, I do still try to make time to get some stuff watched to join these fine folks once a week for our movie discussions. And I believe, Brandon, it's this Wednesday we have our upcoming anime discussion. So I need to get ready for that as well.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hari and Goo. So that'll be interesting. And meanwhile, I also trying to balance my desire to be out in nature and working in the garden and all that stuff with the fact that it's freaking hot. Except today was nice, but yesterday was not nice. And I guess that's about do it for now.
Alrighty, heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin is SeptumSin versus the world. We are all about the physical media, and we try. We've been a little bit more active lately. I mean, it's kind of funny because we filmed a number of videos before Jake got sick and I got sick, so we've been kind of living off of those. Last week we had another pickup, which was kind of cool, and we had our first in a series of videos where we go through every Disney, like Walt Disney Studios film in my collection. And that is actually quite a feat. I've been really enjoying that. It's been kind of fun. We are going to have, it's going to be every Thursday. We're going to have those out. Part one was just about ones that are kind of to the side because Walt Disney Studios did not release every Disney film, and anything that was straight to TV, it definitely didn't do. The other stuff, though, this week, we're actually getting into it. We're starting at the very beginning, and we're moving up in the years, starting with Snow White, which was their very first, and moving up. So it's going to be fun. This year also we're doing this Wednesday we're doing a anime discussion on Hare plus Goo, which is a older, more obscure series. So that is going to be a fun one. I think everybody's going to really enjoy that. Well, at least I hope so. Definitely, I've been enjoying the rewatch. Hopefully, everybody will be up and on. I've only got 2 discs left, so it's going to be good. And I guess, Dave, when you're done, you can come back to me, and I'll talk about next month's or this month's theme. Sure
thing. My name is David Striggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey that we've been having. Where we've been discussing fairy tales, all kinds of films from all walks of life. So hopefully you can check out some of our other film discussions and continue to follow us as we move forward with this year's coming themes. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also go on Sundays about various walks and levels of film. So hopefully you can follow us. This coming Sunday, we'll be doing Sleepaway Camp #1. So that should be interesting. Haven't visited that film in a while. But I also do some video pickups and some video reviews, and I've also been doing a lot of gameplay on the channel. So if you're a video watcher of people who do recording of your gameplay, definitely check some of that out. I have a lot of classic ones I've been testing out on the channel. So. And going back and revisiting some that I've already beat before. before. So, in any case, handing it back to you, Brandon, so that you can tell us what is in store in the coming weeks. Or, yeah. If you
Well,
can.
we are going to war. When it comes to July. Of course, we had to finish up Strange May. This actually, Hansel and Gretel was supposed to be our first one, but just things happened. May was not a good month, but July we're going to war, and the next 4 weeks we're going to be hitting the war films hard. We're going to end the month with one of the the Jack Ryan films, one of the earlier ones, The Hunt for Red October. Good one there. And I think that was Tammy's selection.
Yep.
Then, of course, before that, Jake is going to lead us as we take turns trying not to blow our brains out with the Deer Hunter. I guess he's going to be the one in charge of the revolver.
Nice, cheerful one there.
And Dave is going to take us on a really historic run with The Longest Day, which I need to see that anyway. That's one I've been curious about. Matter of fact, it's the only one on this list I haven't seen. And then next week, I'm going to take us on a Japanese anime view of World War II, which, no, we're not going back to Grave of the Fireflies again. We're going to be covering a film called Barefoot Gen. And this is one I definitely recommend if you haven't seen it to check out. But be wary. This one definitely will horrify you in many ways. Not in the same way as Grave of the Fireflies, where it's just tearjerker. This is horrifying in many different ways. So look forward to that.
Alrighty. And on that note, hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you have enjoyed our discussion. Like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you next week here on Inside Movies Galore. So everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Hey, everyone.